Hi guys, welcome back. Today's hot topic, why is Pro-Am so darn expensive in the world of ballroom dance? I'm here today to answer that question. So thank you again to our fellow ballroom dancer, Frank, who commented on a previous video I'd shared about kind of the underlying financial and political things going on beneath the waves of the ballroom dance world. And this is one of them, certainly. For the record, I always encourage my students to compete amateur over Pro-Am, primarily because it's so much cheaper. And I like, as a teacher, having my students be able to hold their own, basically show up to any ballroom dance and advertise me while I'm sitting at home in bed, relaxing. Whereas when you compete Pro-Am, your partner really has to be there, and your pro's probably not going to be there unless you're paying them for that time. That being said, I didn't realize until I started teaching that there actually is a legitimate benefit to Pro-Am competition. There are actually many dancers who have a very difficult, if not impossible, time finding a partner. So does that mean they should never compete? No, not at all. There are also many dancers out there who make a very good living or who are retired, have substantial savings. They have a really complete full life, and they don't want to dedicate 30 hours a week to that amateur partnership. Or maybe they're married and their spouse doesn't dance, and they don't want to, for whatever reason, legitimate practice with their spouse. Maybe it results in fights. These are legitimate reasons to do Pro-Am. And in terms of a wealthy person, yes, if you pay the pro to teach with you, yes, they are going to back lead you or lead you around the floor in a way that's going to make you look better than the amateur partner is. But that does come at a cost, an expensive one, honestly. Firstly, Pro-Am, you have to pay in full for that lesson. When you have an amateur partner, you get to split the cost of that lesson. When I've taken partnership classes and private lessons in ballet or hip hop, I have had to pay double for that private lesson time. I have never seen that in the ballroom dance world. If you bring an amateur partner to the lesson, you will split the price. The price is the same for one or two people. Now, if you bring in more people than that, that might be a group class price. That's not even necessarily up to the choice of your pro. Usually, in all cases I know of, you have to pay a higher floor fee for that privilege of having more people in the room with you in that class. So anyway, that's going to straight up double the cost of your privates right there. Okay. Number two, you have to pay that pro for your practice time, right? The amateur will show up for free. You might have to pay for a studio membership or a floor fee, certainly, or maybe a gym membership if you practice on a racquetball court or something. But this cost is exponentially less than spending money on private after private after private. If, some of those lessons, realistically, you're not going to be learning a lot. You're just going to be rehearsing, memorizing. And that's okay. I just want to alert you so that you go into that process knowing, hey, I'm going to pay more for this. You also have to pay more for your competition entry fees as a Pro-Am dancer. Certainly when you get to open level, meaning novice, pre-champ, championship, in the amateur divisions or pro doesn't have novice and such, but you just pay one entry fee, and that includes all 5 of your dances. Amateur's a little different. It might just be 3 dances. Pre-champ might be 4 dances, but in the championship level for amateur or pro, you always do those 5 dances, okay? There are a number of reasons that they do this that actually are justified for charging this pro-am more for their comp entry fee. Number one, they offer much more generous scholarships to the pro-am competitors than the amateur. Usually amateurs get diddly squat unless they have a patron, like some sort of amateur dancer advertising at the comp that just wants to throw those amateurs a bone and give them some sort of small financial award, maybe a couple $100. But that money is not given by the generosity of the hearts of those organizers. That comes out of all the pro-am dancers' pockets to pad the pockets of those limited few winners. And to be clear, those winners that win that scholarship at the comp, I guarantee they're paying a lot more than that to enter that comp, to travel to the comp, for the hotel. So it's a hard-earned scholarship. It's not a handout. Number two, sometimes, definitely not all competitions, but I've seen this in some of the smaller comps, they will offer a financial kickback to the pro for every entry that they bring into the comp. As a matter of fact, one comp was so shady, they literally had a separate packet that online that the pro would fill out with the real entry fees that were less expensive than the, I'll straight up call it fake entry packet that they gave to the their students. Like, oh, this is the entry fee. No, it's not. They're charging the student more, which to me is insane. This is absolutely so unethical, wrong, akin to stealing in my mind. I can't fathom it, but this sort of thing does happen. And this has only happened in one comp in my personal experience, and it was not a sanctioned comp. I haven't looked into the NDCA and USA Dance rules, but I imagine they have some sort of guidelines that don't allow that in these sanctioned comps. There are some protections you'll get in those comps that you won't get in the small ones. But there are upsides to the small comps too. I can get into that in another video. Okay. Next, every NDCA sanctioned comp has to throw money into this kitty for this national, kind of nationwide annual scholarship fund for, it's called like World Dance Sport Series or something, that's awarded at the end of the year. And you get rewards for a variety of things. Honestly, you just get points for entering comps. So you could be the worst dancer in the country, but if you enter 5 bajillion events, you'll end up being on this, top elite level list at the end of the year. And you know what? It depends on what your goals are. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. You just got to know what it is that you're actually paying for. Certainly it's something to brag about in your Christmas cards. And, the organizers, those comp organizers, do that at great risk to themselves financially, though there is great financial gain, or at least the possibility of such for them. So they absolutely do appreciate those pro-am dancers and the dollars that they are churning into our industry. Because in my opinion, it's those pro-am dancers that are the financial gas that fuels our amazing dancing in the United States. I feel that the money they bring in is in large part responsible for how the United States currently is kind of the ballroom powerhouse of the world in terms of creating elite level, championship level professionals, because they do make good money, and that gives them the opportunity to invest in the best coaching for themselves. So there is a benefit overall to the industry. In terms of the improvement of our art and our sport that these even entry-level pro-am dancers are bringing to the table for us all. So shout out to you all. Okay. Next up, the pro shows, they have to pay a heck of a lot to bring these professional competitors in to do the pro show for these competitions. Honestly, that is not much of a draw at all to the amateur couples. Here's why. Amateur has its own championship level division. These are pretty darn good dancers. They don't need to pay an arm and a leg to see high quality dancing, whereas in Pro-Am you do. You need to pay for that evening ticket to see the open pro competitors. You need to pay for that, maybe even a table seat to see a good professional show. And so where does that money come from? Well, it has to come from somewhere. They're going to charge those Pro-Ams who are the ones that want to see that show. Okay, and are going to be there to pay for it. Okay, next up, these NDCA, these sanctioned competitions that do allow Pro-Am competition, in itself, it's a draw for the professionals. Okay, not so much of a draw for the amateurs. Here's why. Amateurs do have USA Dance comps that they can enter at dirt cheap prices. Okay, so the NDCA comp does have to compete with these way cheaper comps by offering cheaper entry fees, or the amateurs won't show up. And they definitely want, a full house for their competition. That makes it more fun for everyone. More fun socially, more fun competitively, more interesting. Anyway, so USA Dance is a national nonprofit. They run their own national championships as well as smaller local sanctioned ballroom dance competitions, where it's basically run by all amateurs, which is wonderful. That makes it dirt cheap. Sometimes, like in my case, I owned a ballroom dance studio. I gave them super cheap option of renting my studio space because I want to support the local USA Dance chapter. So a number of reasons they can offer these dirt cheap prices, which the amateurs can always do instead of going to the NDCA comp. So the NDCA definitely has vested interest in offering cheaper entry prices, or honestly, I don't even know they would necessarily show up unless we're very hardcore into the political end. Because politically, you do have to show up, but that's a whole nother video in itself. Oh my gosh, I'm already way over my 10-minute mark, guys. Forgive me. Anyway, the expenses of flying in the judges, especially for an NDCA sanctioned comp, they have to fly in a certain number of judges from across the country. This greatly increases the price for them of the travel fees. Paying the judges, honestly, is a really small part of the fee. It's more the travel. You need to have a VIP room for them with food. You got to wine and dine them. These things are all very expensive. And the local USA Dance comps, especially the small local unsanctioned comps, can just bring in any local Yahoo to judge. And those are good comps in themselves. But as I've shared in a previous video, the local comps do come with their own bag of monkeys in terms of politics and local politics. So anyway, Pro-Am dancers, you are going to pay a lot more, and I just want to give you fair warning. It doesn't mean it's not a wonderful, joyful, rewarding experience. Will you learn? Absolutely. Is it wrong for everyone? No. For some people, it's amazing, it's wonderful, it's less stressful, but straight up, it's more expensive. And finally, why are the privates more expensive? I do want to touch on that, guys. I do find amateur dancers often get discounted prices from the teachers because it's easier for them to teach. It's physically harder for them. Realistically, it is for me to dance with a solo Pro-Am than it is teaching an amateur couple. That being said, most pros don't do that. I certainly have never done that. I charge equal. I don't like playing favorites, but it could be that they're charging those amateurs less. If so, that's why. Number two, they get away with charging their Pro-Am students to compete with them because the Pro-Am has no choice. If you want to compete, you got to pay your partner to be there. You don't need to pay that amateur partner to compete with you. So you are going to pay exponentially more. And I've heard of a major chain studio that you probably heard of. I won't mention names here. I'm not trying to virtue shade anyone, but that actually charges the student not only to pay that pro a boatload of money, but they also have to pay the studio an additional financial kickback to compensate that studio for the income lost for taking that pro out of the studio for the week of that comp. I didn't do that to my pros, but honestly, I get it. I don't like when the pros leave town because I've still got to pay their health insurance and everything. My overhead doesn't change. I've got to pay for the front desk, the phones, the mortgage, etc. So anyway, there are a lot of expenses involved as well. I'm not saying they aren't justified, but they are there. So caveat emptor. Okay, guys, I hope that was interesting, and shout out to all of you competitors and students. Without you, there would be no ballroom dance industry, and I would have no job, and I love my job. So thank you all, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. Bye, guys.